Okay, with the pumps installed in the aircraft now, we're going to start working on interior stuff. First thing we're going to talk about is the wiring. So everything that you see here should be true regardless of whether you buy the harness from us or whether you make it yourself. You're going to have several bundles going in different locations. This first bundle here, which we have the 3 blues and 1 yellow ring terminal on, this is going to be for our boost pump override switch. Again, the boost pump override switch, the idea is that if there's ever an electrical or electronic failure with the pump control module, by turning on the switch to override, those boost pumps will run no matter what. So these 2 wires that are all tied together, these go on one pole of the switch, or rather they go on the 2 poles but one end of the switch, and these go on the other end of the switch. These go out to the pumps individually. Then these bundles of wires are going to the Rotax fuel pump switches. 2 of these wires each, the larger ones, are for our logic that automatically turns on the other Rotax pump if there is a fuel pressure drop and you're only running 1 pump at the time. These other 2 wires are for detecting that the switches have been turned on to begin with. So these are how we know which Rotax pump switch is on, and these bigger ones are how we trigger the other one if you have a loss of pressure. Moving further down the harness, these wires here all say N on the labels. These are all going to the ground bus. These wires here are all power wires. They're going to get tied in. You can either put them on a breaker, which is why we got this terminal on it, or in the case of the VPX, we're going to take it to a pin on the VPX. Because this aircraft was already set up to have the factory boost pump, what we're actually going to do is splice these with the factory power wire, or rather with our power wire that we provided for that factory pump. Moving further yet, these are the wires, well, not that one. These are the wires that go to the GEA-24 and GAD-27 that I mentioned earlier. These go to the GEA. These are for the different pressure feeds. These go to the GAD-27. These are the discrete wires. These could go to the GEA as well if you had room on that for discretes. This is the wire that goes to the fuel selector position sensor with that little white connector on it. These are the fuel pump connectors that go out into the wing. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pop those locks down now. And then finally, this really long wire, this goes ahead of the firewall. This is to that absolute pressure sensor that we showed earlier. So we're on the forward side of the firewall here, and the only thing that we're doing out here is installing the absolute fuel pressure sensor that I mentioned earlier. Again, the absolute fuel pressure sensor, what we're doing is we are measuring what the pressure of that line is, not in reference to ambient pressure, but just what is that pressure period. So one example would be when you are at your airport and you have a barometer reading, that is your absolute pressure. Your altimeter is your absolute pressure. We're doing kind of the same thing with the sensor on the line, because when the RVP of the fuel exceeds the absolute pressure of the fuel in the line, that is when we can start to experience the bubbling or the vapor lock. So by having that sensor, we can more accurately determine if we are in that danger zone or not based on our current altitude, whatever the current temperature of the fuel is running through the system. So let's look at where we put that. So this firewall forward obviously is not complete yet for the fuel lines, but this is where that goes. So you've got your Rotax pump module here, and you've got the inlet side of the pump module. This black fitting here is the fitting that comes with the boost pump system, and then this is the sensor that comes with that as well. So basically all we're doing is we're just putting a union fitting onto the pump module, but we've got this little pressure tap off the side, and so that is what we're reading here. We'll put that back on. Here's the wiring for it. All you have to do is connect this color to color as long as you've got it wired inside the right way as per the diagrams. And then that's it. You've got it connected, and then all you have to do is, using the configuration guidance in the manual, just configure the G3X for it. Okay, we're just about done with the electrical installation of the system in this aircraft, so I wanted to go over that real quick with you. First off, we've got the fuel pump control module down here. You can see we've got plenty of length on this wire. The intention is that it lives in here and goes up against the side skin that closes this whole area out. It can go wherever you would like it to, but that's kind of the location that we found that we believe will work best. Moving on, set that down for now. Coming up to this section here behind the panel, we've got this for the fuel position or fuel selector position sensor. So when that gets plugged in and tied up, it'll live kind of somewhere over here. Over on this side, behind the panel, we've got the wires running to the GEA24 for the fuel pressure information. Over here on the GAD27, we've got the discrete wires for the alerts. Back here, we're actually going to end up putting this in the panel right here, but this is that boost pump override switch all hooked up, so that'll live there. Going down the center of the aircraft are the wires that go out to each wing. The big piece that I want to talk about is going to be with these switches here. If you have one of our panels up to this point and you have not been retrofitted, or rather you have not been fitted for our boost pump system, you're going to have a single pole switch for Rotax pump number 1, and you're going to have a double pole switch for Rotax pump number 2. Rotax pump number 2 is a double pole switch because that is the one that activates the factory boost pump. We're not doing that anymore. So what we've got back here is we've got 2 wires. One of them is a ground reference and the other one is a signal, in this case, that goes to the VPX, or if you don't have a VPX, it'll go direct to the pump. And that is what turned that on. Well, we're not doing that anymore because instead of switching the boost pump system, it's going to be on at all times. So if you have a VPX, you'll need to go into the configuration and you'll need to find your boost pump circuit, and instead of it being selected to a switch input, you're going to select it to always on and save that. And that's going to be the appropriate configuration. If you have a breaker system, then that's not going to matter because we're not going to a VPX for a signal. We're going straight to the pump. Now, the new double pole switch configuration is such that on one side of the switch we have the Rotax pump wires. These blue ring terminals that you can see are the original wires that were already there. You can see that we've piggybacked the wires from our harness onto that. So by piggybacking that, what we're doing is we're allowing the fuel pump control module to activate this circuit as if the switch was turned on. That is part of the automatic fuel pressure loss recovery system that we've put into that fuel pump control module. On the other side of the switch are these smaller wires. These are the wires that signal to the fuel pump control module that that switch has been enabled. So all you're doing is, again, you're removing the old stuff, you're capping the old boost pump switch wires, and then you're piggybacking our wiring onto the Rotax pump wires, and then you're adding the signal wires onto the other side of the switch. And you can see that we've done the same thing for the other fuel pump switch over here. So now that that is done, we're going to go ahead and reinstall these switches into the panel. We're going to put the backlight piece back on, and then we're going to go through some very brief system tests. We're going to show you what to look for before you get everything reassembled.